This tells us everything about the Cowboys' draft plans as a former Dallas Cowboys scout has come out and labeled this edge rusher as a top target for the Dallas Cowboys. We break down each of the edge rushing options, the latest on the trade rumors surrounding the Dallas Cowboys in the NFL draft, and everything you need to know about the Dallas Cowboys here today on Cowboys Digest. Welcome, everybody. I'm Jace Andrews. Hope you're having a great day wherever you might be. Before we get into today's show, I want to say a quick, huge thank you to everybody who has subscribed over the past couple months because we officially hit 16,000 subs this weekend, and it means the world to me. I love getting to do this every single day, and it's such a fun job to have, and y'all are the reason I get to do it. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Let's go on to 17K now. But speaking of some numbers, the Dallas Cowboys have picks number 12 and picks number 20 in this year's upcoming NFL draft in the first round. And of course, questions have spiraled about what will the Cowboys do with them. Well, recently, we talked about them trading up for edge rusher David Bailey. And while that is still definitely a huge possibility, according to Todd McShay and multiple different reports, it seems like there is also a different kind of process of mind the Cowboys might have when it comes to an edge rushing selection, and it comes from 105.3 The Fan, as today they talked about a edge rusher that they have heard the Cowboys have liked, have had interest in, and on top of it, they had a former Cowboys scout in the building alongside to talk about this and really just bring up what exactly it would mean for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, before we get too far into today's show, though, this video is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 sports picks app, and it'll get you into the action in whatever way you want. Now, we're going to dive into some Final Four selections later on in the show, but for now, if you could do me a huge favor by going down in the description and clicking on the link to sign up with the code DIGEST, it really helps out the channel, and it means the world to me. But we'll get you some picks you can use for tonight's contest between Michigan and UConn in a little bit. Now, who was that scout? What did he say? Well, here is the report. Brian Broaddus tells Zach Wolchuk why the Dallas Cowboys might have an interest in Texas A&M edge rusher Cashius Howell. Here is the official quote from today's radio show saying, quote, "If you look at what is going on with the defensive coordinator Christian Parker, he has a relationship with Texas A&M head coach Mike Elko. When you look at Howell, he fits as that stand-up edge rusher, and that's something the Cowboys are looking for. They are looking for a guy that can stand up on the edge and get after the quarterback." This is something that I do like that I think is being mentioned is if we're going to talk edge rusher, and we're going to talk that way, I think the better selection is a stand-up edge rusher, not a guy who's going to get down on all fours, because ultimately, with the way the outside linebacker selection is going to work in Christian Parker's defense, you'd rather have somebody who's standing rather than down on all fours. Now, that's not a huge difference between Cashius Howell and David Bailey, but it is when you talk about the likes of Max Crosby, in which the Cowboys heavily pursued. So for Cashius Howell, again, he's an in-state guy, kind of like David Bailey, and there's some things that we can see and like about him. I think first you can go to the stat page and really pick out some really fun stats. The first of all being that he had 11.5 sacks in this year's most recent Aggies team and led them in part to the playoffs. Obviously didn't really end well over the final 2 games because the Longhorns and the Hurricanes took him out, but besides the point, he performed well. 31 tackles, 11.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble, alongside with 6 passes defended. Last year he had 7 passes defended with 4 sacks, 1 forced fumble, and then his final year at Bowling Green State University, 9.5 sacks, 12 of them being assists, 1 pass defended, was a true edge rusher when he played there. 5 years in college, but overall, he'll come in and look like a day 1 guy. Now, obviously, there's discussion about David Bailey going on, but this is a guy you wouldn't have to trade up to pick. In fact, you might even trade back, because if you look at ESPN's big board, they have Cashius Howell as the number 30 overall player. Now, given the defensive capability of Cashius Howell and overall the way the draft is feeling, I would tend to say that Cashius is going to go a little higher than 30, but at the same time, he also could fall to the second round. He kind of goes up and down, and his combine was definitely an interesting thing with some good and some just okay. That being said, it does beg the question of, is this worth it? Because you can talk about David Bailey, you can talk about the things that he possesses and brings to the team, but he's going to be a hefty price to trade up and get. So I'm going to ask the question now, would you like for the Cowboys to draft Cashius Howell? If you would, then I want you to type Y for yes. If you would not, then I want you to type in for no down in the comment section. I want to see what you think about the potential for the Cowboys to go out and get Cashius. Now, if you ask me, I think the option is yes, but the underlying statistics are things you do have to look at, and you have to be in the right mindset of why you want Cashius, because overall his edge rushing grade is just... his overall PFF grade is just fine, 81.2, but it's his pass rush grade that he lives and dies on, 90.3, ranking him 27th out of over 700 edge rushers. His run defense grade is just okay, and his coverage grade is just not good at all, but it's a guy that will come in here, produce, perform, and be able to really come in and provide and pay dividends to you in so many different ways to the Dallas Cowboys. And speaking of paying dividends, that's what Prize Picks can do with you tonight, as they have the final 4 picks, and I'm going more on a couple of different options. First, I'm taking the more on Elliott Cadeau's assist. It's at 7 right now. Terrace Reed, I'm going to take the more on a Goblin, 9.5 points, meaning that one should be a little easier to grab, but I'm also going to take a Demon, a little harder one to grab with Trey McKinney, and go more on his 11.5 points. These guys have been the stars of the Final Four. They have been the stars of March Madness, and I'm going to put in $20, and I'm going to win 90 back. So follow me with these picks if you want to win some Prize Picks money. Now, in terms of David Bailey, obviously, he's going to have the better PFF record. We obviously know that. He's the number 1 ranked edge rusher according to PFF at 93.3, and that includes alongside with the pass rushing grade. But the statistics, I'm not going to say are outlandishly better than Cashius Howell. Are they better? For sure. 14.5 sacks, puts 3 on his number as opposed to Cashius Howell. But the passes defended, he has 3. The forced fumbles, he has 3. It's relatively similar to what we saw this season from Cashius. They're different body types. Cashius a little bit more of the standing, taller guy. Bailey kind of hunched over, still standing, not putting his arms down. But overall, they have a very similar characteristic in play style to an extent. And one of them you're going to have to trade up to probably pick number 3 to acquire. The other one you could potentially even trade back or select them at pick number 20 and have an edge rusher that you feel confident in. I think there's a lot of things to consider when breaking down both of these guys. Overall, though, it does come to the Dallas Cowboys and what exactly they have in mind for their edge rushers this season. Because we can talk about Cashius Howell, we can talk about David Bailey, but ultimately, what we need to talk about is the defensive depth chart. Because as of right now, Kenny Clark, Quinnen Williams, they're going to be your standout defensive tackles. Then it's Otito Ogbonnia, and you've got Rashawn Gary as your one outside linebacker alongside Donovan Ezerako. If you get David Bailey, I think he becomes a true edge rushing type who plays on the line. You get Cashius Howell, I think he becomes an outside linebacker that plays alongside Ezerako and Rashawn Gary. So I think the better option is probably going to be David Bailey because you need more of a edge rusher on the line type guy, but Cashius Howell provides some of the similar characteristics, but more from an outside linebacker perspective. Again, it's all about what Christian Parker wants to do with his defense, and we can speculate all we want and say this or say that, but until we see what exactly this defense looks like, we can't really tell you, and unfortunately for us, the defense, we're not going to see it until after the NFL draft, so we'll know pretty quickly what the Cowboys are going to want to do. Obviously, with the draft now being closing in on 15 days away, we're going to be getting more reports about what the Cowboys' plans are, how they see best fit for their two first-round picks, and of course, what other teams are looking at. It seems like the Browns might be going after Carnell Tate, which is good because that's not a defensive player, and any team ahead of us that does not pick a defensive player is going to be a good thing, at least for the Dallas Cowboys. Obviously, there's still time. I think that this is something to note that it is a former Cowboy scout who said all these things about Cashius Howell. It's a guy who understands the thought processes inside the room. Now, has he been a scout with Brian Schottenheimer, with Christian Parker? No, but I think he understands the game plan, and especially when just looking from a player perspective and a needs perspective on your team, he probably can give you a dang good insight. But I do want to know what your thoughts are and kind of what you think the Cowboys will end up doing. For now, though, we do appreciate you watching, and thanks for 16K. Peace out, guys.